Kenya to Colombia, from Iraq to Korea, in slums, in schools, in prisons, and in theaters. Every day, people gather at TEDx events around the world to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. Today, you are part of a global conversation about our shared future. So what is this TEDx? TEDx is an initiative of the TED Conference, a nonprofit devoted to ideas worth spreading. We grant free licenses to allow TED-like events to spread globally. This event today is based on the TED Conference format and ideals, but is independently organized by your local community. So please make sure to thank the team of volunteers who worked so hard on today's event. It's their ideas, dedication, and time that made it all possible. It's they who booked all the speakers. And the views you'll hear today are, of course, those of those speakers, not necessarily of TEDs. But we hope their talks spark an exciting conversation among you. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for openness and for critical thinking, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you'll take out. And now, on with the show.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first ever TEDx event that has been held at Yangon International School. My name is Neichi, a senior at YIS who will be serving as your host throughout the entire event. Before the various talks from my very special guest today, I would like to briefly introduce what TEDx is all about for those that are unfamiliar with the event, and will also be elaborating on our theme for today's event. A TEDx event, in essence, is a platform that is given to those who can serve as an aspiration or provide encouragement for people from all walks of life. They are independently organized by the local community, such as the TEDx event we are having today. Moving on to our theme, A World on the Edge, the primary reason why this was chosen as a theme for this event was the sheer broadness of how much flexibility it offers to our speakers. A world on the edge can mean anything, ranging from the beginning of an era to something that is on the brink of change. We, the TEDx team at YIS, believe that diversity of topics is the core philosophy of any TED Talk, and this theme has allowed our speakers to prepare diverse yet thought-provoking talks to all our guests today. So, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our first speaker in this TEDx event, Yangon. Yangon is a licensed architect for the Myanmar Architect Council and the founder of Lin Innovative Networks, an architecture and design firm that provides culturally and environmentally conscious design solutions. He has earned a BSc Architecture degree from the Arizona State University and a Master of Architecture degree from the University of Michigan. Yangon serves as an admissions officer and an architect, as he is passionate about the development of education and architecture in Myanmar. Let's all welcome Yangon on the stage.
Minglaba, I want to start off our dialogue with this rhetorical question. What is Myanmar contemporary architecture of today? And what is our identity in defining our own built environment? The answer is quite apparent. We have none. Let us first think of Myanmar's established architecture that we are accustomed to. So the first thing that will come into each of our minds would be the endless archaic ruins and temples of Bagan, the shimmering stupas of our golden landscape, and the ornate Buddhist monasteries across our cities and our country landscapes, and the stilt houses of Inle Lake. That's what we think of Myanmar's glorified architecture, the innovations of our culture's past. This shows that we have been trapped in our glorified past in defining our architecture, an architecture that has been frozen in time and space, where it hasn't been innovative to become a typology, a new typology that defines us, who we are as a culture and a society today. Architecture has lost its agency over culture in transitioning towards modernity and the modern society of Myanmar. As architects and future architects of our nation, it is our duty and responsibility to carry this dialogue across cultures and forge a solution that defines our modern day architectural typology for Myanmar. Currently, architecture has lost its place and authority in modern day Myanmar's culture and its built environment. So social, cultural, political, and economical factors has defined our built environment today, and especially the economical factor that dictates Myanmar's architectural typology in our present day. Due to this economic factor, we architects have lost our role as master builders and craftsmen in our building industry, where it is misled by economic-driven property developers who have little or no reverence upon nature, urbanity, and the built environment. Lastly, cities across the country has been molded and shaped by the demands of the economical needs rather than their ethnic roots, culture, and traditions. In this scenario, architecture has lost its roots and place in our culture, where it has given up the agency to represent our modern day national identity. So we have pretty much lost our modern day Myanmar national identity in terms of architecture. So gone are the days where people took pride in our culture, our identity. As I look outside my window today, I see a hint of what Myanmar now is, cloaked by a facade of pop culture, globalism, and fast-paced consumerism. Pretty much an economically driven force leading to the loss of our own contemporary identity. Myanmar architecture in present day has been hindered from progression and from innovation into the 21st century, which is not a representation of us as a society today. We are in search of this answer, this ultimate answer, and has been lost in translating our cultural history to modernity. I remember what American architect Peter Eisenman once said: if we are only busy preserving the past and not living in the present and unable to look forward, we should let new things to happen. So this statement it's totally relevant to us in certain extent, especially in defining our Myanmar's contemporary architecture. This statement just reminds me and us as a culture, we have been dwelling in the past and the innovations that has happened in that time period, rather than looking forward to new inspirations and pushing the envelope and the boundaries in creating a new typology or an architecture identity of our own in this timeline. In our situation, we must not abandon our past. That is basically the diverse and enriched traditions and craftsmanship of our culture and the technical peculiarities of our regions throughout history and present day. We need to trace back to our cultural roots by investigating upon the vernacular techniques of building and construction, which utilize the materials and resources that can be found particularly on our sites and the region itself. the place and site plays a significant role in determining today's architecture throughout the world. As the Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava once stated, Myanmar, my architecture is very much place related. So this is the way how we bring in the dialogue of our cultural past to an applicable asset in developing a new form of architecture that resonates with the modernity of our time. That is basically taking into consideration of nature, climate change, and sustainability, a response towards global architecture movement. In Myanmar's contemporary architecture typology, a sense of place, identity, nature, and sustainability becomes core pillars of our design thinking today. When our team got commissioned to design Myanmar's first ever liberal arts and sciences university, we were provided with the vision to perform a design act that creates a paradigm shift in our culture and in architecture. This was the opportunity for us to explore what Myanmar contemporary architecture of today can be, the ultimate opportunity to explore that. In designing this university's master plan and its respective buildings, we highly contextualize the region and the site it is situated in, especially the rolling green landscape and hilly side of Morbi Township in Yangon Division. We perform numerous studies and analyses that encompass the notion of deconstructing the site in layers of history, culture, and nature in formulating a design manifestation that defines the intent and the site. Based on these studies, we came up with a design solution that utilizes the language, culture of the site in formulating a design dialect that represents the intent of a forward-looking university with regionalistic principles that determines a paradigm shift in our architecture typology. In determining this new architecture typology for Myanmar, we need to incorporate the values of our cultural heritage, inclusion, and diversity while having reverence upon humanity, nature, and sustainability. We must create an architecture that is humanistic to preserve our way of life and culture in a way that emphasizes on utilizing passive design strategies to attain sustainable standards for our built environment. It is our generation architects and the future generations architects' responsibility and duty to restore the agency and authority of architecture within our culture, especially to continue this dialogue and defining and discovering and formulating the answer to establishing Myanmar's contemporary architecture of today and tomorrow. A dialogue we must continue to carry on to the upcoming generations to come, so we will not have a disconnect from our present and the future like today. Thank you.
Wow, it was an amazing talk. It is astounding learning about architecture from your talk. I believe we learned a lot today. Thank you for your insightful thoughts about Myanmar's architecture. Now, let's all welcome our next speaker, Arushi Padi. Arushi is a 7th grader here at YIS. She is the founder of an online blog that speaks about a variety of problems, such as gender-based violence and mental well-being. LMB blog collaborates with multiple students and clubs for the purpose of giving a voice to everyone in our community. Arushi's hope is for equality in every aspect of life, and she aims to inspire people while helping them find joy in expressing their interest. The floor is yours, Arushi.
So I'm a little bit of a control freak, and I love everything to go according to plan. I mean, who doesn't? So when all this happened, I went a little bit crazy, or a lot of bit crazy now that I think about it. And you might not be as much of a control freak as I am, but you still might want to control this situation a little bit. And I don't blame you. Controlling or wanting to control things is a psychological and biological necessity for us. It is said to be essential to our well-being. Control comes down to choice. So if the choice that you chose is what leads to the outcome, then you'll feel in control of the situation. And being in control makes you feel like you are not under someone else's control, and it also lowers your risks of mortality. Studies show that those with a higher need of control usually set greater goals and tend to achieve more. But can it go too far? Well, yes, it can. Control is a good thing, but only up to a certain point. Beyond that point, the drive to control can truly make you miserable. For example, if the choice that you have and the choice that someone else have don't lead to very different outcomes, you're still going to feel disappointed if their choice is what gets chosen. For example, you want to clean your room, but then your parent comes in and tells you to clean your room. You don't want to clean your room anymore, even though the result in this particular scenario is the same, a clean room, and you want that. You still don't want to clean your room anymore after your parent asks you to clean your room, because you don't want to feel like they control you, especially right now where the need to control things is much higher for many people because we can't control the world. We all love to control things as much as we hate it. For example, I love to control my life down to the second. I love scheduling things and just planning everything. And for so long, I didn't know why I did that. But now I realize it's because since I can't control everything that's going on in the world, I find peace by controlling my schedule very, very obsessively. You might find control in skipping class because everyone tells you to go to class, and skipping class makes you feel like you are in control. Or you might find control in doing work like I do, or planning things. It's very different for many people, but we all love control. And it goes up to a much higher scale as well. Power and fame. Many people want at least one of the two things. And it's because you get the ability to control a situation if you are in power or you have fame, or you at least get to influence some people that your choice is the right one and it should go ahead and be the chosen one. Now, your brain is quite smart. It can regulate emotion, it has working memory, it can sense and feel things, but it's also quite dumb and completely under your control. So if you tell your mind that the situation that you are in is the one that you would have chosen, it's going to start to believe it. The power of affirmations. Affirmations are phrases or words that you repeat to yourself or write down over and over again until you eventually believe it. This is scientifically proven. Your brain has a hard time figuring out what is imagination and what is reality, and we can really use that to our advantage with affirmations. Now, affirmations are usually used for self-love with phrases like, I love myself, or I'm strong, I'm confident, I'm resilient. And those are a really great use of affirmations if you would like that. But you could also use them with phrases like, this is for the best. This situation is what I would have chosen, and I am so glad it happened. We all love control, and we're still gonna like to control things even if we don't want to. So instead of complaining about your situation and making your perception about it even worse, try to tell your brain that it is for the better that this happened, that this could teach you something or lead to a bigger lesson. Remember, you are in control of how your mind perceives situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Arushi, with your eye-opening talk about being in control of our mental well-being. It was great. A control freak myself, I find this talk very helpful. I'm sure all our guests are too. So, next up, Dr. Kaizia. Dr. Kaizia is a prominent doctor in the Gokgen ethnic group and an entrepreneur for the Borderless Clinic. She is the co-founder of Burmese Chinese Medical Charity, an organization in Myanmar that with a mission to provide free healthcare to all lives in Myanmar. Dr. Kanzia's hope is the prevalence of healthcare equity in Myanmar brought about by advancements in healthcare technology. Now, let's give it up for Dr. Kanzia.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Kanzia and I'm very honored to be here today. The topic that I would like to share with you is the future for rural healthcare in Myanmar. First, I would like to start with the word telemedicine. So, what is telemedicine? Telemedicine is the practice of medical care by using advanced technology to deliver care to a distant site. It means that telemedicine is a physician in one location can take care of the patient at a distant location by using telecommunication infrastructures. As we all know, to see your doctor in person, you need to take time off from the rest of your day. That means you need to take time off from your work. And also you have to drive a long way to the hospital. And if you ever experienced moving around in Yangon, you will know that the traffic is horrible. Sometimes it may take at least an hour to one location to another location. And of course, even though you reach to hospital, you still have to wait in the waiting room to see the doctor in person. The whole procedure is very time consuming if compared to telemedicine, where the doctor can see the patients and perform all the procedure, such as checking his or her overall condition, asking the present illness, giving the diagnosis, prescribing the medicine, giving suggestions, and also refer to the other specialists, will all be done without meeting him or her in person. Although telemedicine is convenient, based on my experience, trust me, for the majority of people in Myanmar, it is within their deep-rooted culture that they think it is necessity to see the doctor in person rather than on a screen. It is because they believe that how would a doctor know what is wrong with me if they didn't see me in person? Back in 2017, when I was working in a hospital in Bangkok, at that time we provide a service called teleconsultation for Myanmar patient. But you know what surprised me was the people in Myanmar still wanted to do a visa, book a flight, travel thousands of miles away, staying up in a hotel, spending much more money just to see their doctor in person. That's why I think it would take a long time for Myanmar people to accept telemedicine. But you know, everything changed when COVID-19 say hi. It was during the first wave of COVID-19. Almost all the specialists in the hospital in Myanmar, they saw their patient via video call. You know, this is the hospital guideline to reduce the risk of transmission of COVID-19. So this is the new adaptation that we have to make using telemedicine in our healthcare. I also did online medical consultation as a charity program. It is called Burmese Chinese Medical Charity. And all the consultation fees goes to the COVID fund. Most of my patients are from Gokgen ethnic group because those Gokgen people they barely understand Burmese, so they need a doctor who can speak Gogan language. I gained a lot of patients from Gogan, where it is very far from Yangon, and all thanks to the telemedicine, so that we could communicate and I could see them and take care of their health. So here comes another question. To what extent is telemedicine reliable? I must say telemedicine is of course reliable because it allows doctor to see their patient face to face, even though it is through the screen. Let me give you one example here. Yesterday, one of my friends called me around 11 p.m. It sounded very urgent, and she requesting me to do a video call with her cousin who is currently living in another town. I accepted the call. Her cousin was crying, very panicked, and showed me her 3-month-old kid. The baby's eyes was full of discharge and can barely open. She told me that her kid was well before, and just in that morning, the kid will full of discharge and cannot open the eyes at all. She was very worried, and she said it is very difficult for her to go to the hospital at that moment, because of the national curfew. I came her down. I take a close-up look to the baby's eyes through the screen. I checked the eyes, and I noticed that there is no redness around the eyes, no swelling, and no inflammation. I told her to take the home thermometer to check the baby's temperature. She did it, and the baby's temperature was normal. I came her down. I explained her it is very normal for the kid at this age to have the discharge like this, because it is due to the lacrimal duct obstruction, we call. The lacrimal duct is the duct around here, between the area between the nose and the inner corner of the eyes. There's a lacrimal duct. I tell her that it can be fixed just by simply massaging this area 10 seconds a time and 10 times in a day. And I told her not to worry, just be noted that if there was any swelling, any inflammation, or any redness around the eyes, you really need to go to the hospital and do a furthermore checkup. This morning, I received her call. She told me that her baby is all better now, and she expressed her gratitude towards me. And it all thanks to telemedicine again. For most cases like this, checking patient condition and having effective communication with patient is enough for the doctor to determine the correct diagnosis and treating individual personally. And of course, sometimes we need to refer the patient to the corresponding specialist or to the tertiary hospital to have furthermore investigation. The rise of the telemedicine in Myanmar is a very good sign, as it allowed us to take a big step forward in purchasing our vision, health equity for Myanmar people. Health equity is where every citizen have a fair chance and opportunity to be healthy. According to UNFPA, 30% of the Myanmar population is living in the urban area, while the rest 70% are living in the rural area. What this means is, those who live in rural area, they are lack of specialist doctor and infrastructure for their health. In some severe cases, the entire village, about 50 or 100 houses, have only one single nurse to take care of their health. So, If they have some diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, or heart disease, they need to travel a long way to the big cities like Yangon or Mandalay for a better healthcare, which is very time consuming and costly. So if we could set up the telemedicine in each village, or in each clinic in the village, or in each primary healthcare center in that village, the population in the village can access to the healthcare, to access to the specialist anytime, any place. As a third world country, one may wonder about how the villagers acquire technology required for telemedicine. However, a download of a simple face communicate application would do. And in this day and age, almost everyone have a phone. That's why we say that telemedicine is the future of healthcare. And telemedicine will revolutionize the whole healthcare system in Myanmar. Thank you for listening.
Dr. Kanzia, your valuable insights in healthcare technology in Myanmar is astounding. We certainly did learn a lot about telemedicine and healthcare situation in Myanmar's rural area. Thank you for your contribution to Myanmar's medical field. Up next is Waylin. Waylin, a student in his second year at Strategy First University with an aim for Bachelor's in Information Technology for Business. As one of the founders of Yanx, a full-stack developer at TheBank Club, Waylin has optimal experience in the field of technology. At the young age of 14, he was inspired by AI technology and dreamed of a world where futuristic technology aids the lives of millions. Let's all welcome Waylin to the stage.
Everything around us, even our actions, are impacted by big data. The phenomenon took shape later in the last decade, since big data became a driving force behind the food industry revolution. We human beings tend to generate lots of data each day, from heart rates to our favorite songs, fitness goals, and movie preferences. Forbes says that there are 2.5 quintillion bytes of data created each day. And according to an estimate by IBM, we're receiving 300 times more information than we had in 2005. These are some mind-blowing statistics. So, how do we exactly collect this enormous amount of data in real life? The answer to that question is data mining. Data mining is basically a process used to collect and turn this raw data into useful information. So nowadays, data mining is rapidly advancing, and so is our ability to analyze and understand this copious amount of data. There are now a growing number of compelling ways in which big data analytics is being applied to solve real-world environmental problems. Climate change has moved to the top of the list of global risks, and affecting every country and disrupting economies. Out of many promises that big data had made, environmental sustainability is one of the most important ones to be implemented and maintained. So, let us look how big data can help us achieve environmental sustainability. So before we talk about this, I have separated the impact of big data into three categories. The first one is big data in healthcare and in sustainable cities and communities, and the last one is for climate change. So let's start with the first category, which is big data for healthcare. Nowadays, many countries are collecting a large amount of public health data from the hospitals and healthcare providers, and now they try to translate this data into understandable information. This information are then used to improve the healthcare of people. Big data has enabled us to monitor the well-being of people and also monitor and visualize the rate of infectious diseases, such as COVID-19 in different locations using big data analytics. For example, in South Korea, they combine big data with deep learning AI to monitor and map out the rate of infections of COVID-19 in different places, which is very useful in taking effective actions against the virus. In this way, South Korea was able to lower the cost of the rate of infection and save millions of lives from the deadly virus using advanced technology and big data. And so now let us move on to the next category, which is big data for sustainable cities and communities. So basically, a sustainable city should have a good transportation system, a good efficient energy supply, effective healthcare, and full access to clean water. So we can use big data analytics to make our cities and community more eco-friendly and sustainable. And so first of all, big data analytics can be used to monitor and control the traffic in different regions by analyzing and visualizing these data collected from GPS devices and satellite images. This can help the city transportation management to be a lot easier and assist public transportations to be more timely and accurate. Moreover, big data can also be used to track down and reduce our carbon footprint. In addition, big data analytics can help us monitor and control electrical energy supply based on the energy demand in different places. So the developed countries are now starting to use the thing called smart metering systems, which uses artificial intelligence and big data to plot and map out the energy demand and supply patterns in different locations at different times. This can help us to estimate whether to increase or restrict the flow of electricity to reduce the energy wastage and ensure that adequate supply of electricity is reached at peak hours. Furthermore, big data help us monitor and calculate water rates anywhere in the world based on various parameters related to water quantity, water quality, and other changing regulatory issues in different regions. In this way, we can map out and identify the places that don't have access to clean water and take necessary actions to provide these specific places with resources they need. So these are some ways that big data is helping us to have a sustainable cities and communities and make our cities more efficient. So let's move on to our last category, which is big data for climate change. Nowadays, scientists and meteorologists are using big data analytics and big data analytics and combining them with deep learning AI to track and predict the rate of global warming in the future by collecting the enormous amount of climate data from the weather station around the globe. This can help us draw plans and procedures to take climatic actions against this global warming, which is an enemy that each and every one of us is facing right now. Agricultural businesses are also using big data analytics and deep learning artificial intelligences to analyze and forecast the rain and the amount of rainfall. By focusing these rainfall and rain, this enables the businesses and farmers to efficiently grow their crops and reduce defectives. And another thing is that big data analysis can be also used to analyze data from different sources such as satellite images, geospatial platforms, and simulators to warn natural disaster, support disaster management, and facilitate a rapid response to these hazards. In this way, the big data can help us save millions of lives and properties from hazardous disasters by taking safety precautions in advance. And also by combining and analyzing big data from satellite images, crowdsourced witness accounts, and the open data, we can track deforestation in different places around the world. This can assist us in tracking down and taking effective actions to reduce deforestation in different regions which is one of the main causes of climate change. So in short, these are how big data is helping us achieve sustainability in the three categories that I have mentioned. So now it is clear that big data and analytics are redefining the climate change and environmental policies of the governments. In fact, big data seems to be an indispensable component of the climate policies. Big data technologies have been able to process enormous volume of complex climate data and establish correlation when required and help us provide real-time analytics whenever we need it. And almost all the tools that I've mentioned above have the ability to provide us with real-time data whenever we need it. However, big data can only do so much. Effective environmental actions are required with all the information that we have gathered to achieve environmental sustainability. We can use the useful information and insights that we have gathered from the big data analytics to make step-up efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and strengthen resilience and adaptive capabilities to climate-induced impacts, including climate-related hazards in all the countries. We can also integrate climate change measures into national policies, strategies, and plannings, which therefore spreading environmental awareness and also improving our education system. So after all, it is up to us to the people of the world to take concrete actions in order to achieve environmental sustainability in this world. Thank you.
Wow, the talk was really intriguing. Thank you, Waylin. We certainly did learn a lot about your experience in technology and the outstanding information you have on it. Next, with our guest speaker, Michael Rutland. Having attained his undergraduate degree in physics and mathematics at the University of London and later his master's at education at the University of Southampton, Michael Rutland is a notable individual who has successfully integrated both education and science into his career. Having over 45 years of academic experience under his belt, he was elected as Physics Teacher of the Year by the UK Institute of Physics. He currently resides in Bhutan, in which he founded the Bhutan Society of the United Kingdom and currently serves on board as a Vice President of the Society. He also serves as the Honorary Consul for the United Kingdom to Bhutan. Furthermore, he has also been rewarded with the Order of Merit, Gold, by His Majesty, the King of Bhutan, for his extensive efforts in bridging the gap between the United Kingdom and Bhutan. It is an absolute honor to bring you to the stage, Michael Rutland.
You know, old men should not give TED Talks. We've seen too much. And the trouble is, when you've seen a lot, it can either make you disappointed, disillusioned, and in despair, or, contrariwise, it can imbue you with a spirit of hope and optimism. And it's pretty obvious that what I'd like to do today is to point out that no matter how much the world may seem at the edge, in fact, you have to deal with them in a spirit of hope and optimism. And you know, one of the things about the world at the edge is this. Do you mean the world at the edge, the whole world, or do you mean my own personal world? And that is rather well exemplified in the well-known introduction, the very first lines of Charles Dickens' famous book, A Tale of Two Cities, where he said, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." Well, how's that for an edge? He went on to say, "It was an age of wisdom, it was an age of foolishness. It was a time of belief, it was a time of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. How's that for a wonderful description of the world on the edge? But of course, he was writing about the French Revolution some over 2 centuries ago. And the French Revolution was a world event, but it was also a personal event. And he showed how the person, the individual, and the world event, how the two came together. So sometimes we can take the world upon our shoulders. Isn't that a line from the Beatles' famous, song, Hey Jude, don't take the world upon our shoulders. And sometimes we can look at world events and make them so personal that they weigh down on us. Equally, we can do it the other way around. We can sometimes have our own personal worlds on the edge. Your girlfriend has just thrown you over for somebody else. You've lost all your money. You had a car accident. Your own personal world can be on the edge, and sometimes there's a danger that we actually translate that into the world on the edge. We over-exaggerate its importance. So if we look at the world today, certainly there are lots of edges to be thinking about. And one of the biggest world edges, of course, is the environment. But I don't want to go on too much about that. Too many people, or shall we, perhaps not enough people, go on about the environment. But I would say that the environment is the world issue. And one of the problems in getting people to take it seriously and do something about it is to actually turn the world issue of the environment into my world, my edge, to make environmental issues personal. To many people in the world who experience the consequences of environmental problems and global warming, it certainly is part of their personal world on the edge. If your home is destroyed by floods, if you are harmed by massive forest fires, if you happen to suffer a flood due to a glacial lake outburst. I live in the kingdom of Bhutan in the Himalayas, where we're a constant threat of glacial lake outbursts due to global warming. Then the world issue becomes my own personal issue. But we do need to distinguish between the world and my world. Now, if I can just talk for a minute about my world. As I said, old men shouldn't give TED talks. We've seen too much. Well, I was what was called a war baby. I was born a year before the Second World War started. And so the first 6 years of my life were lived in imminent danger at any moment of being blown up by a bomb. Today, some people still live in that situation. But it was certainly my first 6 years of experience that at any moment you would hear the siren wail, and it had a spine-chilling effect. It went whoa, like that, and you rushed down to your shelter and you heard bombs bursting around you. I remember that even at the age of 4 and 5. And actually, because I was a kid and didn't realize the implications, it was actually quite fun. And so a bad experience for my parents and grandparents was often a bit of a fun experience for me. My world was okay. Their world, my goodness, it was on an edge. Would we be there in an hour's time? Well, the other things I experienced in my childhood during the war were rationing. Now we don't have, in the Western world at least, we don't have food rationing. I don't think many countries have food rationing, although many people have very little food. But you were rationed to 1 egg a day. And that was when I experienced the first sense of disappointment and disillusionment with an edge. Because 1 week, so I've said one egg a day, no, 1 egg a week. And on a Sunday morning, I remember there was a boiled egg laid out for my breakfast. It was the 1 egg in the week. And when I cracked the egg open, it was bad. It smelled and stank. And I suffered for the first time the experience of disillusion. The other times, the other edges that I've experienced, the imminent danger of a nuclear war. I cannot tell you how, in the 1960s, during the Cold War, how much people believed that at any moment we were going to be blown up in a nuclear war. Well, it hasn't happened. It's now 2021. We survived that edge so far. Then I experienced the disbanding of the British Empire, which, if you remember Churchill's words, though the British Empire last for 1,000 years, well, it didn't last for 1,000 years. I was working in the Royal Air Force in Malta, for example, when Malta became independent. And if we think about it, I now live in Bhutan, which is just north of India. India only became independent in 1947 when I was 9 years old. So I have seen the British Empire disintegrate. I've also seen the rise of the People's Republic of China and Mao Zedong. I've also seen the rise of the Soviet Union under Stalin. But I've also lived long enough to see another edge, which was the collapse of the Soviet Union. How must people who lived in the Soviet Union have felt when they saw it collapsing? Some would be glad, but many would feel this was like the end of the world. I've seen the development of international travel. When I was young, the idea of going abroad for a holiday to Spain was absolutely amazing. I remember we all went to see some friends of ours who had been to Barcelona. My goodness, that was an edge. That was like going to another planet. Today we all fly around the world just like that, until, of course, COVID has come along. And it has reminded us that the ability to fly willy-nilly as we wish, whenever we want, to wherever we want to go, has actually been taken away from us in the last year and a half. And that is going to create another edge, because it causes us to question now whether all this international travel is actually necessary. Health. If we look back to 1918, the Spanish flu killed 3 million people. The Spanish flu killed 50 million people worldwide. So far, COVID virus has fortunately killed, and sadly, 3 million people. 50 to 3. Why? A number of reasons. First of all, the nature of the virus, but also our improvements in health and our improvements in vaccines. There were no vaccines in 1918. They hadn't been invented. Antibiotics were hardly there. So there were no antibiotics in 1918. Today we have all this medical technology to help us. But that is something that also brings its problems, because along with medical technology advances, we have an ever-growing increase in drug-resistant diseases. Drugs have stopped being effective, for example, for malaria, for tuberculosis. So we now have a rise in our medical skills and knowledge, but a growing problem when our medical skills and knowledge are not able to cope. Another edge we have to deal with. One of the big edges, which I feel is happening now, that I may not have to cope with because I'm old, but anybody here who is not as old as me may well find this a big issue. And that is the whole issue of what is truth. We are finding an ever-growing rejection of the concept of objective truth. And it's being replaced by the concept of the truth is what I think. If I think 2 and 2 equals 5, 2 and 2 equals 5. If I choose, and I won't go into the whole issue of gender identity, but the idea of objective truth is coming under threat. And a very well-known Irish writer, some 300 years ago, he said, "If a lie be believed for only an hour, it has done its job." And he said, "Falsehood flies and the truth comes limping afterwards." And we can see that now with variations of truth. The concept of it's all right actually to tell a lie, and the idea that if I tell the lie firmly enough and it's my lie and I do it often enough, it'll be believed. And as Swift said, the truth comes limping afterwards. Well, George Orwell, we all know of George Orwell because of his book 1984, which when he wrote it, it was very much the future. Now, of course, it's very much the past. He actually based his book on his experiences in the Spanish Civil War. And he wrote an essay well before he wrote his book. And in that essay, he said the following, if I can quote from George Orwell's essay. He said, "Nazi theory indeed specifically denies that there is such a thing as the truth. The objective truth does not exist," it says. "The implied objective of this line of thought is a nightmare world in which the leader or some ruling clique controls not only the future but the past. If the leader says of such and such an event it never happened, well, it never happened. If he says that 2 and 2 are 5, well, 2 and 2 are 5. Now that's what George Orwell wrote years and years and years ago. And today we are actually finding that, for example, the Seattle Public Schools Board is introducing a mathematics curriculum in which the objectivity of 2 plus 2 equals 4 comes actually under question. Now, I could go on about all the edges that we are finding, the change in attitude to work, which has resulted from the COVID-19 experience. Before COVID, many people fitted their lives around their work. After COVID, many people are now seeing that what they should do is fit their work around their lives, that their life, their family, their children, their social life, their friends actually should take priority over their work. So many people will want to work from home. But of course that opportunity is only open for people whose work can be done from home. There's not much point calling the plumber to repair a burst pipe in your house and he says, "That's absolutely fine, I'll do it from my home." There are some people who will not be able to work from home. And is this new approach to the work-life balance going to create another divide? We have the rich-poor divide already, but is it creating another divide between those who can work from home and those who can't work from home? So I'd like to finish by emphasizing what I want the message of this little talk to be. That is to say, edges are there all the time. The world is always at an edge. The way to deal with edges is with optimism and hope. You know, the dinosaurs, when they saw the meteor coming, which would result in their extinction, I bet they were full of despair. But even though the dinosaurs went extinct, we actually have their descendants here with us on Earth in the shape of birds. So there's hope and there's optimism always. And I'd like, finally, if I may, to quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who had a way of putting deep ideas into simple words. And what the Dalai Lama said is, it's so important to cultivate an attitude that allows us to maintain hope. Hope can make a great difference to how we respond to problems and difficulties. It's hope that motivates us to get out of bed and carry on with our lives. The hope that we will eventually be able to achieve our aspiration for happiness, and the hope that somehow we are able to overcome the obstacles we face. It's hope that keeps us alive. Remember that when you think of the world on the edge. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Rutland, for taking time out of your busy schedule to give us this eye-opening talk. It truly is inspirational, learning about different historical events you personally experienced when the world was on the edge. And I gotta say, my world definitely was on the edge during this event's technical issue. So, next up with the final speaker for the event, Yangon International. Yangon International, an 11th grader at YIS and the co-founder of youth charity organization Myanmar, also known as YCOM. YCOM addresses communal issues relating to education, healthcare, water sanitation, and the environment. With over 30 members, they have carried out multiple community service projects that aid in these communal issues. Yangon wishes for young people to bring about positive changes in the community as he believes they have the ability to do so. Would you please join me in welcoming Yangon International.
Have you ever felt the guilt of sitting in a car and hearing knocking on your window to see a child peering in, asking for money or trying to sell you something? Well, I have been there, and the reason I felt so guilty in that situation was because I came face to face with someone who had a harder life than me. In that moment, there were two entirely different worlds, separated by a pane of glass. I'm going to tell you about a serious problem in our country. A problem so ingrained into our society that we may even see it as normal. So it's time for us to open our eyes and see the true nature of this problem. This is the Punline Golf Estate, a beautifully landscaped oasis with luxury estate villas, an exclusive golf course, a country club, a hotel, an international school, and hospital, away from the hustle and bustle of Yangon City. At first glance, this looks wonderful. But after zooming out, it shows a completely different picture. Clinging to the outskirts of this luxurious compound is a sprawling slum where more than 30,000 people live in squalor, under thatched roofs, amid open sewage and widespread disease. It's a truly dystopian scene. On one side of the fence, a wealthy few bathe in pools, relax in spas, and have access to some of the country's best facilities. While on the other side of this very fence, thousands of people live without access to running water, toilets, or clinics. It's heaven and hell side by side. And after seeing all of this, I hope you're able to see the problem that we've been overlooking. And that problem is social inequality. Social inequality is when there is an unequal distribution of not only wealth, but also the overall quality of life within a society. And in simple terms, it's like when one kid gets 3/4 of a cake while another kid only gets 1/4. In fact, the kid with the smaller slice is expected to share with 10 other kids. And this analogy contains the same principle that is behind social inequality. It is the unequal distribution of resources and quality of life. And prolonged social inequality leads to poverty. Like we saw in Punline, poverty prevents people from obtaining the same housing, the same healthcare, the same education, and the same social goods as the wealthy. So as a result, impoverished populations simply don't have the resources and the opportunities to break out of the endless cycle of poverty. And this is a prevalent problem in our country. However, the problem of social inequality is not just confined to Myanmar. In fact, the world collectively is facing a global inequality crisis. It's just that for developing countries like Myanmar, social inequality can be a serious and crippling problem due to two main reasons. The first reason being the widespread poverty that already exists in the country. Social inequality will simply push the impoverished even deeper into poverty. And the second reason being the level of risk that already exists in this country. Due to our geographic location and climate, Myanmar is vulnerable to natural hazards like cyclones, flooding, earthquakes, landslides, and fire. In more recent times, we have had to deal with severe monsoon flooding, infectious diseases, and political instability. And this combination of inequality and risk is the very formula for poverty itself. And the reason poverty is so widespread in our country is because we have experienced chronic inequality and risk. And now, with over a year of a pandemic and recent political turmoil, it is most likely that poverty in Myanmar has been exacerbated, pushing millions into unimaginable conditions. In 2017, a quarter of Myanmar's population lived below the national poverty line. And now, after the pandemic, it is estimated that around 2/3 of the country's population live on less than $1.9 a day. $1.9 a day is the international poverty line for extreme poverty. And 2/3 of the population in Myanmar live under $1.9 a day. Let that truly sink in. 2/3 of the population living in extreme poverty. This shows that now is truly a critical time to take action. And I encourage you to open your eyes to the inequality that millions of people in this country face. And if you want to help solve bigger problems like poverty, we have to tackle inequalities and risk first. And the issue of inequality is not just a problem for the government. It's a problem for all of us. And the ambivalence and inaction of people, especially from privileged backgrounds, does more harm than good for the problem of social inequality. I recognize that I myself come from a background of privilege, but I lived most of my life unaware of how privileged I was. But through my experiences doing community service over the years, I started to see the reality. And I believe that other youth from similar backgrounds as me should also recognize the privilege that they have and to open their eyes to the reality of the situation. Coming from backgrounds of privilege, we have the resources to help those disadvantaged by social inequality. These are other human beings we are talking about, living in the same society but not given the same chances. We should care about this issue because we play a critical role for the future of our country. Although we may not be able to help every single person disadvantaged by social inequality, what we can do is support these people in any way we can and provide them with the tools to overcome social inequality themselves. So here comes the big question. What can we do to help? The first thing you should do is consider starting your own organization or joining an existing service group. This is the very first step to your mission. Trust me, having a group of people with the same vision as you who will support you along the way helps. As for me, I co-founded an organization called Youth Charity Organization Myanmar, or YCOM for short, in 2018 with some friends of mine. And our mission as an organization was to help improve communities and aid those in need in Myanmar through sustained connections, education, fundraising, and the involvement of youth volunteers. And since 2018, YCOM has grown to over 30 members. But before taking action, you will not only need a group of volunteers, but you will also need funds. Funds will help you carry out your projects, and these funds can be used toward helping disadvantaged populations access basic needs and social goods like healthcare or education. Your donations could help a child go to school. It could help someone get medical treatment. It could help feed a family. And how you raise your funds is totally up to you. You could do bake sales, online fundraisers, donation boxes, or charity dinners. But the end goal is that you raise enough funds to give back to your own community. The mission of your organization is up to you, but undoubtedly, one of the most valuable things you could do with your funds and resources is sharing education. Education helps people break out of the poverty cycle. Education is an extremely useful tool that can go a long way as it instills the willingness to learn throughout life in those who possess it. With this understanding, my organization YCOM decided to dedicate our very first project, Gateway to Success, to sharing education. And Gateway to Success had a simple goal in mind: to set students up for success through educational empowerment. And we first implemented this project back in 2018 at a monastic school in South Dagon Township. And we arrived at the school with a group of around 10 volunteers and an experienced life coach to help guide the students throughout the workshop. I remember that although it was a relatively large room, the room was packed from front to back with around 80 students, and they were all enthusiastic to participate as this was all a new experience for them. And we recognized that as these students come from difficult backgrounds, they might have felt discouraged or lost hope about their own futures. But we also know that they must also have aspirations of their own. So we hope to change the outlook they had for their own futures by instilling in them a positive growth mindset. And throughout the 4 days of our free behavior change workshop, we had motivational activities that aligned with our mission. And seeing the smiles of the students in the positive environment that we had created was what made it such a rewarding experience. It's safe to say our first project was a smashing success. And in the very next year, to mark our 1-year anniversary as an organization, we hosted a free Gateway to Success seminar, and around 400 students from public schools all across Yangon attended. And this event was an even bigger success. But all of this would not have been possible without the volunteers from our organization who are willing to set aside their own time for the betterment of other lives. And if you want to help those in need, you will also have to be willing to dedicate your own time, energy, and talents. Your talents in whatever it may be will be of great use in helping your community. And dedicating your own time is the only way that you can do that. And you may even find that dedicating your time towards helping others is more rewarding than working solely for your personal gain. After YCOM, we decided to put our efforts toward donating affordable water filters to impoverished households in Dalat Township to access clean drinking water. And the reason we carried out this project was because access to clean water is a basic human right. And many communities in Dalat did not have that. The village we donated our water filters to was next to a massive landfill and was heavily polluted. Therefore, there were surely health hazards to consuming water from nearby water sources untreated. So after donating our water filters, we held a workshop at the local school where we explained how our water filters worked and the importance of water sanitation to school children and local village people that attended. So going back to the big picture of social inequality, especially in these difficult times, we must uplift and support our country's disadvantaged populations in any way we can. And your help always counts, no matter what socioeconomic background you come from. So with that, I would like to impart you with the message that although you can't choose whether you come from privilege, you can choose how you use that privilege. Social inequality may be a challenging ingrained problem to deal with, but with collective effort, it can be overcome. The current state of things should be a powerful reminder about how flawed our systems are and how there needs to be a change sooner or later. But just remember that change starts with you. Thank you.
Yeah, your active participation in community service project is truly admirable. I would like to thank you on the behalf for your contribution to the community. It is truly thrilling to see youth's effort in improving Myanmar's community and participation in addressing social inequality and poverty in our country. I hope our guests are more aware of how severe this issue is in Myanmar. So, this concludes our final speaker and TEDx Yangon International School's first ever virtual TED Talk. We acknowledge the fact that it is a challenging time in Myanmar, but despite the circumstances, we TEDx team, along with the speakers, pushed through to deliver this event as we believe in the importance of sharing information. Please give a round of applause to our wonderful speakers for their meaningful and encouraging talks, and to our entire TEDx team, including Mr. Strader, the advisor who helped us make this event possible. We would just like to once again thank everyone for attending and hope you are inspired by the wonderful speakers that we had today. Thank you and have an amazing rest of your day.